to Junior ECTV. So tonight we are pleased to welcome award-winning teacher and author Jamie Mason Cohen. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have you. So my first question, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot because I know you've had a really fabulous career in television. You worked for Lorne Michaels with Saturday Night Live. So why did you leave the successful career in television to become a teacher and to pursue this passion for education?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet all of you. Well, I thought I was successful. I was working for Saturday Night Live. I was behind the scenes with U2, and you'd see Eminem come up, and I had my friends come in from Toronto, and we could go to all these great parties. And so I had access to this incredible world, and of course working with brilliant people like Jimmy Fallon and Will Ferrell. But my father phoned me one day, and he said my grandmother was sick in Toronto. So can you book a flight immediately back home? And that day was September 11th, 2001. So as you know, I couldn't have got on that flight. It was LaGuardia, 9:15 a.m. So the next morning, I ended up hitching a ride back to Toronto. I mourned my grandmother's loss after spending the last few hours with her. And I came back to New York. And I went into my office, and there was people doing something a little peculiar. Everyone was packing. And I noticed people were packing staplers and pens and letterhead, and I thought, what are they doing? I looked on my desk, and there was a pink slip. And a pink slip, as some people know, is you're laid off. Because after 9/11, New York and the rest of the United States wasn't really laughing. And I asked myself, what am I going to do with my life?
What's next?
What's next? And I didn't realize at the time, but what it taught me later was sometimes you have to let go of the life that you think you want for the life that's waiting for you. And that point really hit home for me when I became a teacher. And a few years later, I was teaching in the Toronto District School Board. And most of my students in this particular class were refugees from countries, war-torn countries like Afghanistan and Congo and the Sudan. And on the last day of class with this grade 10 class, we had this beautiful potpourri of food from all over the world. And many of them wrote me handwritten notes. And one student in particular, Jacob, who had a really hard time in terms of some of the content that we were talking about in class, and eventually we got it and we stayed after school. And he came up to me and he said, sir, can I give you a note? And I read the note, and it said, when I came into your class, I felt dead inside. And after your class, I feel alive.
Wow.
And at that moment, I felt successful.
Wow. That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think it proves that you are on the right track. And I just love what you just said. It was actually so profound. Let me ask you guys this, because I think Mr. Cohen is a great teacher. We can already tell just by being sitting here with him. He has a presence. What makes a great teacher, in your opinion? Do you have any great teachers?
I shall go first. One thing that you said already that just indicates to me that you are an excellent teacher and that you really care is your dedication. The fact that you took extra time that you're, out of your life to help him and to sit with him and to work through things. You actually took an interest in his life, and it wasn't just like from the morning bell to the ending bell. That's it. In my car, I'm out. Like, I don't know. And in terms of do I have it, I had many teachers who really mentored me and who cushioned me in many aspects of my life.
What made those teachers great? What qualities?
They understood. They didn't try to be superior. They were, even though we're not friends, they were friends. And they actually connected in a way that wasn't, I'm maybe 20, 50 years older than you, but it's like I see you as an equal, and that really levels the playing field, and that makes it more easier for students to be vulnerable and to show them that we have weaknesses, that I would like your help in this. And they were just there.
Teddy, what makes a
Adding
great
on
teacher?
to Lillian, I think something really important she said was about how they talk to you like you're a person. One huge difference between an experienced, a long-running teacher and someone who has to teach, who's forced to teach in a specific situation, no matter what it is. Maybe they're teaching a specific class or teaching their kids, is that they tend to pay patronize in the beginning. They tend to look at kids as, oh, they're younger, they don't have as much experience, they're not as intelligent as maybe an adult. But it's a teacher that can really see how so many of these people, yes, they don't have the experience, but they're an open book. They're waiting to be written in. There's so much they can suck in, so much knowledge, and so much they can do themselves. And it's about fostering this growth and talking to them like an equal and teaching them to become an adult.
Exactly.
A lot of school today is about passing, and the teachers are there to, okay, these kids want to survive, they want to get the grade and go. But I think when a teacher such as yourself recognizes that these kids want to learn, and that teachers like yourself also have a passion for it, that reflects back on the students. They begin to have a passion for it. They want to learn.
Layla, do you want to learn, or do you want to be inspired?
I want to be inspired. Like, honestly, I'm at school to go to university to get a job, but I spend 7 hours a day at school, probably more.
Yeah.
I spend 5 days a week there. This is my life. This is what I do. So I actually want to be in a place where I like it and I enjoy it, and like things I'm learning new things. If it's just all dull and I'm 16, I have so much I can learn, so much I can do. I'm open to everything. So I need to have a teacher who can give that to me, who's just also open, who's passionate, who wants to do
meet
that.
you at that level.
Exactly.
So Jamie, I'm going to let you're the expert here, and you've dedicated your life to trying to help other teachers become great teachers.
Yeah.
How do you make a good teacher a great teacher? Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. And I think, Lillian, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and Teddy, right? You were saying, I think you both spoke about passion and helping students grow and find within themselves. And I think a teacher has to be a role model for that. So a teacher who opens up, a good teacher who knows the content and the curriculum and does their best to communicate that to the students, that's important as a basis, but I think it's going a step further and showing a little vulnerability and telling stories that the students can then transfer to their own life, and they can see Layla, right? Yeah, and they can hold that up as inspiration for when they go out in the world. Because I wanted my teachers to also be role models. The great teachers I knew, they were not boring, they tapped into different learning styles, they were really inspiring, not just what they brought in the class, but for the example and the presence that they had. They were dynamic, and they had a good sense of humor. Not so much making jokes, right? But they wanted you to really come into a learning environment that was open and engaging, and that you were leaving the class better than when you came in.
Do you think humor does play a role in the classroom? Do you think it's an important thing to have in the classroom, some humor?
Humor doesn't necessarily need to be cracking jokes. It can just be understanding. There are some teachers, especially a lot of substitutes, they come in there, they're already combative. They see kids as, if they do a bad thing, you have to respond, you have to retaliate, you have to punish. Whereas there are the other teachers where not necessarily let it roll off their back, but they understand, maybe the kid's having a bad day, maybe something else is coming up. They understand, hey, if the kid is bored right now, and I know this is a good student, maybe I can engage them more to ensure that they have a happy environment. That's what I think having a good sense of humor really means.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there can also be not only humor, but humoring. As in, like, if a student wants to come and has a great idea about, I want to start at this club, I want to get this initiative going, and just like, let me just, let's try it out. Let's do a test shot, because that's exactly what happened with me when I started my own vocal group at my high school, and I just went into the principal's office, I'm like, I want to do this. And there's like, you know what, you just tell me anything you need, and it's done.
Which is so amazing.
It was, it just really allowed me to see that these people who used to be aliens, used to be foreign to me, are actually friendship material.
Students?
People.
Actually
People.
Exactly. Like, it's the worst when you walk in that classroom and a teacher's like a robot. Like, you come in, your teacher sits down, your teacher sighs, turns the board, writes something on the board, sighs again, doesn't do anything. But when you actually have a teacher who comes in and actually can have a conversation, and you're actually, oh, this is a person, not a teacher, I get help.
Seems excited to be there for sure.
Yes.
So obviously a good teacher is an amazing thing to have in the classroom, but the other thing that I think we need in the classroom is we need new ways to engage students in terms of educational technology and innovation in the classroom. We're living in a completely different time. You don't want to learn the same way that I learned in high school, and you certainly don't want to learn the same way that our parents learned in high school. We don't just want to, take notes out of a book. You want to be interactive. You want to have, something exciting going on in the class. Do you really think that, we're doing a good job here in Ontario of incorporating technology into the classroom, or is it just putting a YouTube video up, passing around an iPad? Are we doing a good job? And I know you have a lot to say about this. I want to know what you guys think first.
So For me, I think it's a double-edged sword because there's some teachers at my school who use the technology really, really well. Like they have those Avery things that you can like put a paper under and write on it so you can see it right away. And then they also use games like Kahoot, which is like super interactive, really great way to learn anything that's memorized based. But then you also get other teachers who like use PowerPoint, but they can't figure out how to full screen it, and everyone's just like, I can't focus on the PowerPoint because it's not full screen. So I think we need to train our teachers how to use the technology that's available to them.
Okay.
Not only that, train them to select the right technology. At my school, we have 3 different main technology hubs. We have one where we have Chromebooks, which were recently purchased. We have netbooks, and we have iPads. The iPads cost about 3 times as much as those Chromebooks, which are about $200 each, and we barely ever use them. We use them in 3 science classes, and every one of those classes, they were so unresponsive, so unnecessary that we ended up just spending that class playing games on
Did
them.
you feel like it was just like a check the box? We have an iPad in the
Whereas
class.
when we got the Chromebooks, which is now only in one department, which I hope more schools start to get, we use those every single day in class. We get work done. I don't only get work done in that class, I get work done in my other classes using that. And I think that's the issue. Parents see, oh, we need more technology. Let's give a technology budget and then buy stuff. No, no, no. You need to make sure it's proper. You need to make sure there are people who are choosing the relevant stuff, and you need to make sure that's put into the right hands.
Yeah, I think an issue a lot of students have is seeing how not only technology, but even certain lessons and how we can use them in real life. You know, students will sit in class thinking, how is this going to help me? Like, you know, then they're not listening, they're not focused. So I think not only by putting that technology in front of us, we're like, okay, I can relate this to everyday life, and I see myself using this in the future, and I think that's important.
So, Jamie, tell us a little bit about, because you've developed this self-organized learning environment that you call a SOUL. Is that how you call it?
Yes.
What is that? And tell us what you're doing to incorporate technology into class, because you've won awards for doing this. So,
Well, first of all, I want to say, talk to Olivia's point there. I think the transferable skills are important, not just about what the teacher's teaching in terms of the content, but what can you use if you end up going into business or marketing, or if your job requires you to put on a really multimedia presentation. And so what I developed, I was lucky that TED and Huffington Post awarded this. What I did was I started with annotating, had my students, it's easier to see, but I had them annotating a website online with a technology called genius.com. So what you can do is post a book, and then the students made multimedia links, and they asked questions, and I could reply in real time. So much so that my wife, one night, we were sitting up in bed, and our kids had finally went to sleep at 8 o'clock, and she said, who are you on the computer with? Right? So I said, well, actually, my students. She went, what? And I showed her the website, and my students had made these incredible little, almost selfie videos where they were responding to what they were reading at 11 o'clock at night, like they were so engaged.
Wow.
And so what I did with that is then I added flipped videos. So when the kids had questions that they didn't know the answers to, because Sebastian Thrum, who started one of the largest massive open online courses in the United States, was the chief engineer at Google, he decided that the way that you get students engaged, one of them, is sometimes give them the answers, is you want them to get engaged in the learning process, but if they struggle too much with the answer, so I would sometimes post answers to the questions, one time even standing on my head, because it was Siddhartha, and it was about yoga, you know, the founding of yoga and Vedic traditions. So I did the opening because it was the hook, by standing on my head and saying, I'm going to teach this class for the first 5 minutes on my head. I lasted about 3 minutes, but we did that in our tech room.
Wow.
And so the self-organized learning part was after the students had a foundation with this genius technology, and they also were teaching themselves, like you were saying, or I was helping them learn as the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. I then asked them a big question, which is a soul. What does it mean to reach enlightenment? What does it mean to be a good friend? How do you know if someone's a mentor? And then they explored that question, investigated through online research, and they posted their answers online. That was a little unit that I did with them using technology.
Amazing.
see, that is just so interesting, and I feel like that is something that, you know, if I was a student, I would be engaged in, I would want to participate in, I would be excited about. And so I think that that's the movement that we need to follow here, is we really need to get creative with how we use the technology. Just because a piece of technology is there doesn't mean it's going to transform things just because it's in your classroom. With the iPad example, just because it's an iPad and we associate an iPad with you know, a cool new gadget doesn't mean that shoving an iPad into somebody's hands is going to all of a sudden change the way that we learn or the way that we feel. So I think that that's really interesting. I want to talk a little bit about just education in general in Ontario and some of the things that I know have bothered me a little bit. One being that I think the most important thing is everybody has different learning styles, everybody has different abilities, everybody has a place to shine, but I think some of the ways that we grade and the ways that we sort of view our students in the classroom need some updating as well. How do you feel about the standardized testing? Do you really feel like that does a good job of reflecting where you're at as a young person and how much you know? Layla?
Definitely not. I'm not a person who can perform well on tests. If you had a face-to-face conversation with me, I could tell you everything about that subject because I know it. But when it comes down to a test, I can't write well. I'm a terrible speller. I have terrible grammar. Nothing ever comes out the way I want to say it. So I'm getting super, super, super low marks. But if we just had a conversation, I could honestly tell the teacher everything I know, and I know the stuff.
would be
I can do the work. It's just I can't prove it.
I think standardized testing's only use should really be basic screening or something like that. I'd understand if universities might want to see your SAT scores or your LSATs or your GMATs or all of that, just so they can understand, okay, this person might be ready. But when you're using it to distribute stuff like, I don't know if they use it as much in Canada, but in the US, a lot of funding is distributed based on these scores. And as a result, you have some shady practices, administrators making sure the kids who are getting high grades, hey, you better be here. Other kids saying, hey, you can stay home if you want. It's sort of
ranking schools.
Exactly. You're looking at outside, it gets too meta, and they're thinking, how can I get a higher mark on this? That's not how it should be working.
Jamie, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think it feeds into biases because I think private schools in some cases have the advantage than certain public schools. So first of all, it's not fair. Second of all, like Layla said, it teaches to the test. And I've seen students go through extreme test anxiety when they can't deliver the information that they know, that they've studied, that they've spent nights on, and then they get this test and then they freeze. And I taught overseas for a year, and I saw Australia. I was teaching in Malaysia, but I saw the Australian, and it's not all Australia, I think just this particular school, and the whole year, certain Malaysian students who wanted to study in Australia, they only focused on this one long standardized test. There was no engagement, there was no creativity, ingenuity, it was just this test.
Just this test.
And it's very limited and dangerous intellectually when there's no curiosity and it's so constrained.
Yeah. I want to ask you this, were you a really good student? Like, were you a student that, because you're a very successful person and you have an energy that you're giving out, were you an A student when you were in school?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting, because and neither was I, and I feel like I've managed to, you know, be successful in my life, but not based off of anything that I was being graded on, you know, in the way that I was being graded. So I think there's so many students out there that have so much to give and have so much potential, but sometimes as a young person, when you see these grades and you see all the time that you're not, you know, maybe you're not measuring up, you start to internalize that. And so it's interesting how that can kind of hinder you. We have 1 minute. Do you have one piece of life advice, really quick, 1 minute, that you want to give to these young people here today?
Maybe something practical. I read recently that 50% of 13 to 19-year-olds have never written a thank you letter. So I think as you get out there to distinguish yourself, to really show people your humanity, your true self, is write thank you letters to people who you're grateful for, whether it's your teachers or the first person that hires you for a job, or even your parents.
I think that that's really good advice. And I think that everybody feels something special when they receive a letter from someone. I mean, that thank you letter justified to you your entire change in career and sort of probably motivated you to want to do that for more people. So I think that that's an amazing piece of advice for sure. You're going to write a thank you letter, Layla?
Oh, I have like 3 people in mind right away of who I can write thank you letters to.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we are going to be right back with more with our special guest, Jamie Mason Cohen, right after the break.